Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to call this meeting of the Police Advisory Panel to order. Joining us via teleconference or via Teams is Mr. Ricky Walker. He couldn't be joining us tonight, and also Mr. Alan Allen. Mr. Ricky can't join us tonight. He had something come up, and so we have a quorum, and we have with everyone online. And so that being said, I'm going to call us to order. And item number 2 on the agenda is approved minutes from September 9th, 2020 meeting. Everybody had the opportunity to see it? Ready? I move we approve this. Have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. Oh, I am? Am I talking now?
No, you're talking.
All right, sorry about that.
You want to do it again?
Yeah, I'll start over. I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the meeting of the Police Advisory Panel. It's we are joined by Mr. Alan Hours and Mr. Ricky Walker via Teams. Mr. Rinkovich can't be here tonight, and the rest of the panel is joining us to include Commissioner O'Quinn. So we appreciate everybody joining in, and like I said, I'm going to call the meeting to order, and the first item on the agenda is to approve the minutes from the September the 9th, 2020 meeting.
I move we approve the minutes as submitted.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Alan, I'm not hearing anything out of you and Ricky. I'm assuming that y'all are okay.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I can hear you.
Okay, I can hear you now. Ricky, are you with us?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you able to hear me?
All right, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye again.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thank you. The minutes have been approved. Item number 3 on the agenda is the, if everyone, for those of you that are just joining us, we were tasked with, by the commission to look at the IECP recommendations. One of those recommendations, in a pretty huge recommendation, was to look at the internal affairs process with the county police department. That being said, they have rewritten the policy, and we have the officers here tonight to explain the policy, take us through it step by step. So if any point during their presentation, if you have a question, please feel free to interrupt and ask. I think Lieutenant Talbert, I think you're going to lead off. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
So in front of you, you all should have a copy of the policy. I won't go over it verbatim, but I'll kind of outline the whole process of an internal affairs investigations. So with the IACP study, the Office of Professional Standards was implemented or created with the department, and their responsibility, one of their responsibilities upon referral from the chief, is to oversee or conduct serious administrative investigations. So starting with the personnel complaint, it can either be made internally by an officer, or supervisor, or by the public. So for informal complaints, so an example would be inappropriate driving, lack of courtesy, untidiness, things like that. That can be handled informally by a supervisor. That's one of the things that the ICP study cited was, something informal, something minor could be handled at a supervisor level, and it's less stressful on an officer, and they have more faith in the whole process of investigating a complaint.
Let me ask you to back up for just a second,
Sure.
if you will. If a citizen has a complaint and they want to register a complaint, please explain the process and how that person can go ahead and register that
Sure.
complaint and what they need to do.
So anybody can you can take a complaint either orally, in person, or by telephone. So in our lobby, we have a GCPD complaint form. They can come in, they can fill one out, they can call, make it over the telephone, make it in person. We have a log, once a complaint is made with somebody, that they fill out a complaint form. So if somebody comes in, makes a complaint to a supervisor, if they don't do a complaint form, the supervisor will do a complaint form. That way it is logged and it is tracked. That is one thing that ICP referenced in their study as well, is being able to track complaints and the disposition of those complaints. So they can come in, like I said, orally, over the phone, or in person.
Is that process on the web?
Is that process on the web? That I do not know.
Okay.
It is? Yes, it is on the web. So like I said, supervisors will ensure that all formal and informal complaints are on a complaint form, and there is a logbook. It is issued a complaint number. That way it can be tracked. And like I said, that's one of the things the ICP study cited. So once a complaint is filed, it'll make the determination whether Office of Professional Standards, depending on the severity of the complaint, whether they would investigate or it would be handled by supervisor, line supervisor. So once that complaint is filed and kind of going through the process, and I'm on page 4 now, once the supervisor gets that complaint, it'll be given to the immediate supervisor. It'll be forwarded to the watch commander, who will contact the Office of Professional Standards to determine who will have responsibility for the investigation, who's going to investigate it. It goes into contact with the complainant. If someone comes in and files a complaint, we will be in contact within 3 business days, and we will stay in contact with them during the investigation to kind of keep them up to date on the status of it. In the event of a complaint of potentially serious nature, the Chief of Police and Office of Professional Standards will be contacted immediately. So when you go further into the policy, it kind of just outlines the investigation.
Question, I'm sorry.
Sure.
You said in the event of a serious complaint,
Yes, sir.
what's the determination, or who makes the determination of whether the complaint is serious?
Well, I guess that would be with the watch commander, the supervisor. So it kind of goes over formal and informal, you know, a formal complaint or something of a serious nature. You know, there's a difference between speeding, that could be handled by a line supervisor, versus an allegation of excessive force, a theft, criminal nature, something like that would be a serious offense.
Okay, was any consideration given to having a third party outside of the line of chain of command at least review those complaints to make assist with making that determination?
Yes, that's why the Office of Professional Standards would get involved. So once a complaint is filed, they can contact the Office of Professional Standards. If it's not a serious complaint, then it can be handled by a line supervisor.
And the Office of Professional Responsibility would refer that back, is what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
So once the investigation goes through the process, it's investigated whether it's by a line supervisor or, let's say, a serious complaint is investigated by the Office of Professional Standards. Once that investigation is complete, they will basically go through the chain of command of that officer in his division and give his supervisors the ability to look through that file, to review it, give suggestions for discipline all the way up to the division commander. So, and that, I refer back to the ICP study on that as well. They also, you know, while time consuming, it helps ensure multiple perspectives, you know, going through his supervisor up to the division commander. So once that is conducted, the file is turned over to the division commander. We have 3 captains. We have an admin commander, a patrol commander, and an investigations commander. He will review that file. He will make recommendations for discipline, and then once that, and that will be included in the IA file. Once that is concluded, it's then turned over to the Chief of Police to review. He will review the recommendations and any accompanying material. He can modify any recommendation for discipline, or if he's not satisfied with that investigation, it can be returned back to the division commander.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
When a complaint is given or filed by, let's say, a citizen, I know you spoke to that it goes into a logbook. Is there a, for lack of a better word, a receipt given to that citizen saying, we've received your complaint? Is there a formal acknowledgement from the police department so that, you know, a complaint may not get misplaced or something, and someone said, oh, I gave it to so-and-so? Is there a formal receipt when those complaints are submitted?
Did you say you wanted?
I can address that.
Okay, when we receive the complaint form, there's 3 signature blocks on it. There's one for the person making a complaint. If they choose to sign it, they're not forced to sign it. The persons that are receiving the complaint, which is normally the records clerk, they'll call me up there, because usually if it's a complaint against somebody in patrol division, I will handle that. Once I get there, after the clerk signs it off, in front of that person that actually submitted the complaint, I sign off as a witness. If I'm not there, and if it's like the patrol supervisor there, the watch commander, then they'll sign off witnessing that they received the complaint form. So that's the documentation. Once we get that, then that is logged into the logbook. It's given the actual serial number, and that's how that works. But yes, it is a documentation. It's done in front of the person making a complaint. That's if they make it in person. Now, if they make it over the telephone, we'll take the information down and then take it from there. As long as we got contact information, we can get back with them.
So do they get a copy of the attached form here? Do they get a copy of that, are you saying?
If they wish to have one, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
So that would be a receipt?
Well, basically, they'll get a copy of the same form that we got showing it was received by the police department and it was witnessed by a supervisor. So that's their proof. We also give them a copy of the complaint number also, so they have a reference to it, just like a case number.
So if the complaint is made electronically or telephonically, there's no mechanism in place to have a copy of that complaint received by the...
It'll still get logged in the book, but it'd be like for example, a memorandum stating that we received it. The last complaint, matter of fact, I'm working on it right now, just about completed with it. That was sent via mail without a complaint form, but it was still logged into the book with a log number.
But the citizen doesn't get a copy as if he or she would have come in person.
No,
they can't obtain a copy of it.
But we'll respond to them, like, say, for example, like, if they email it to us, they'll get a response email stating we received it. So they get some kind of notification that their complaint was received. Okay.
Any questions?
So as we continue along, I went over the process, the dispositions. There are several dispositions for a investigation. Unfounded, when investigation discloses that the alleged effects did not occur or did not involve departmental members. Complaints that are determined to be frivolous will fall into the classification of unfounded. Exonerated, when the investigation discloses that the alleged act occurred, but the act was justified, lawful, and or proper. Not sustained, when the investigation discloses there's insufficient evidence to sustain the complaint, and then sustained once the investigation discloses sufficient evidence to establish that an act occurred and that it constituted misconduct.
Lieutenant, is there a process for feedback to the person filing the complaint if it's unfounded or they're exonerated? Is there any kind of process that goes back to that person to let them know what happened with the case, and is there another step? Is there a step they could take it further if they were not satisfied?
So throughout the investigations, they should be kept up to date with periodic updates. Once the investigation is closed and disposed, or there's a disposition, they'll be notified by mail. They will get a response in reference to the conclusion of the investigation.
Okay.
So we go on to talk about administrative leave. If the complaint is of misconduct of a serious nature, the chief of police can put an officer on administrative leave until the conclusion of the investigation. If it's not of a serious nature, he can continue to work until the investigation is concluded. In the event that there is a criminal element of it, a criminal allegation, we would continue to work our own investigation. Our standard procedure is to contact an outside agency to conduct a criminal investigation. So criminal investigation and an internal can run side by side or parallel.
What's the trigger point for contacting that outside agency? I mean, I know a serious allegation, but I've been asked this question by the public. What is the trigger point where y'all would let's just use the GBI because that's the normal course of events. Is there a trigger point that you would notify them and ask them to come in and do a parallel investigation or a separate investigation? Just explain kind of what that process would be if you can. I know that's a tough question.
Sure. Ultimately, the chief would make that decision. And it boils down to transparency. You have an outside agency, a third party, the unbiased doing that investigation. So, the most common common is officer-involved shootings. We won't we'll do an internal, but we don't do the criminal. We call the GBI to do that. So really, that would fall to the chief's discretion when to call them in, if it's criminal nature. If that answered your question.
It does.
There's not really a threshold. I guess it would boil down to when he felt it was necessary to call them in.
It does, but I think there's an assumption out there that any criminal act, that there should be an outside. The public, from what I'm hearing recently, is the public thinks that anytime there's a criminal allegation, there should be a separate outside agency doing a parallel investigation.
Yes, sir. Chief, I don't know if this would be a better question for you to answer.
Good evening, folks. Good to see everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. It's a difficult question to answer, but it's something that as a head of an agency, you do have to make those type of determinations and those types of decisions. I could certainly see if there was some type of conflict of interest within the agency itself that we may have to seek outside assistance, but certainly if there is any type of act of a criminal nature at all, whether it be theft or any type of criminal, I would certainly reach out and have the Georgia Bureau of Investigations involved. I hope that answers the question to some degree.
Yeah, and that's automatic.
That's automatic. That would be, it's a transparency issue to me. I would certainly reach out to my bosses, the county manager and the county commissioners, and let them know what was going on. But that responsibility lies with the chief of police, and that would be my determination, would be that if there's anything of a criminal nature or even something of a conflict of interest, that I would reach out to the Georgia Bureau of Investigations. And that goes back there again, like I say, to transparency. I don't want somebody later to say, you could have or you should have.
I understand. I'm not trying to pick at you, but I'm just trying to get the information out there so the public can understand exactly what the process is, because there's a lot of uncertainty out there now, and this is a new policy going in that you guys have just recently written and approved, and you're submitting it for approval, and we want to go through it. And for those of you that are listening, our plan is going to be to try to get these policies on the website so they're transparent, so the general public knows. And then if something's not in compliance with what the policy is, then you have there's an avenue you can pursue to ask, what is the policy, why is it not being followed, or how is it being followed, and what's my feedback? So
sure. And I think that's the purpose of these type of interactions. One of the things that I've learned here tonight is I certainly like the idea of giving them the case number from our internal affairs case, some type of, I think the ticket was what was referred to. And if we have not been doing that, that's certainly something we will do in the future, is that we can provide them with that number. Now, I can tell you that since I've been there has been direct interaction back and forth. The investigating officer has kept up to date with those folks. But if they have something that's put in their hand, whether it be electronically, I guess the only time we would not be able to do that would be if they call in telephonically. But we could certainly give them that internal affairs case number that they could write down and have to show that they made that contact. So that's certainly something that we can do if we're not already doing and maybe doing, but we can follow up on that.
Is there a process or a procedure where your IA, and I don't know what the policy is going to be stating, where IA actually participates with the outside agency during the investigation, or are you kept separate from the investigation?
Those are kept separate. The internal affairs investigation is looking for policy and violations, things like that, whereas the outside agency is looking of things of a criminal nature. Things that are discovered in an internal affairs investigation may not be used in a criminal investigation at times, and vice versa. So it's a very fine line to walk, but I think it's something that, as you said, we need to be very clear and transparent with the community. Those policies and procedures belong to Glynn County. So we want people to be able to read through them, and if they have an issue or a problem with them, we can certainly discuss it. We can certainly, as we've done tonight, talk about some things that may either improve or that we need to change, and we'll be glad to do that.
Does the final disciplinary action, the adjudication, is that shared with the complainant, whether it's a citizen or another officer?
It is, yes, sir. There's a letter, a formal letter that's written that is provided to the complainant, letting them know exactly the outcome of the investigation, and if there's any type of punishment that goes with it, they're told that also.
I have a question and then maybe more of a comment. My question is, I want to make sure I'm clear on when an outside agency is brought in for an allegation of criminal conduct. The way I understood your answer, it would be if there's any allegation of criminal conduct. So just as an example, would that include something on a misdemeanor level, like a clerk at a convenience store alleges that an officer shoplifted a candy bar, all the way up to a serious felony? Would anything, even a minor, I'm going to call it a minor, I'll say rather than minor, a misdemeanor level criminal matter, would anything be referred outside, or would it be limited to more serious crimes?
In my personal opinion, as the person that has to make that decision, any type of anything of a criminal nature. Fortunately, we work very closely with the Georgia Bureau of Investigations. I can certainly reach out to them, explain to them what's going on, and get their advice as to whether or not it rises to the level of something that could work. But in my opinion, if an officer's accused of something of a criminal nature, it needs to be explored by an outside agency.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
then my other comments more related to the complainant receiving documentation that the complaint's been recorded. If the complaint comes in via telephone orally, or if the complaint is sent via email, would it be overly burdensome, if this is not already part of the policy, to at least advise that person? Now, obviously, if someone comes in person, you can hand them a copy of the documentation, but to advise that person, you can, if you'll give us your contact information, you can be sent a copy of this, or if it's electronic, like via email, sending it in PDF form, just having a consistent policy that the person will be given the documentation.
Sure, and I believe currently they receive an email back letting them know that their complaint has been received, but we can certainly make part of that to send it electronically back. There again, the only one that I would see would be an issue would be if somebody calls in a complaint and doesn't leave any information or their callback number. We can certainly, if they're willing to give their address and fill out the form completely, then we can mail them a copy or whatever we need to do to make sure that they have we want people to know that we're taking it seriously, and the way to do that is for them to be able to hold something and show us that I spoke to this person on this day. And hold us accountable.
Any other questions of the chief from the panel? Ricky, you or Mr. Howard? Okay, Resident, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir. I'll kind of continue through the policy. We talked about division commander responsibilities. Upon receipt of a completed personnel investigation, division commander of the involved officer shall review the entire investigative file, shall make written recommendations regarding the need for further investigation and dispositions of any allegations, and the amount of discipline, recommended discipline. Upon receipt of any written recommendation for disciplinary action, the chief of police shall review the recommendation, and the accompanying materials, and he has the discretion to modify any recommendation or return it for further investigation. So we have continuing a pre-disciplined employee response. It's intended to provide the accused employee with an opportunity to present a written or oral response to the chief of police after having an opportunity to review the investigative file. It's not adversarial. It's to speak about the investigation with the chief. Have the opportunity to further respond orally and writing to the chief of police on limited issues of information raised in subsequent materials. He can request further investigation if there's something that wasn't investigated fully to what he feels. He can request further investigation into that before the file is completed. So we talk about disciplinary action, formal warning, probation, suspension without pay up to 5 days is a minor disciplinary action that can be issued by the immediate supervisor of the officer. We talk about major disciplinary action, which is probation, suspension without pay up to 240 hours, reduction in pay, demotion, or termination.
Lieutenant, if I could interrupt you one more time, probably going to be a bunch more times, but
That's fine.
is IA involved in the hiring process or the screening of new applicants?
No, sir.
They're not?
That falls under our recruitment officer, Officer Colin Scoggin. He conducts background checks on applicants.
Okay.
It is not unusual for agencies to have IA involved, you know, with an extra personnel to help do background checks. So that is not unusual to happen.
Okay.
Goes on further, nothing in this section shall limit the discretion of a supervisor or chief of police to require remedial training, participation in counseling measures or programs, substance abuse testing, or administrative withdrawal of privileges. Do you want to talk about the Douglas factors? And I'm going to let Steve Tarnowski elaborate on the next section.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So we'll talk very quickly on the disciplinary factors to be considered. Ties into the concept of a disciplinary matrix, and probably the lowest level of understanding of what this is the federal sentencing standards, and all of the problems and complications related to those are the same in the administrative setting. So that is an evolving discipline, I guess is the right word, and the way we've written it to the policy here is to be sure that the Douglas factors, which are listed here, they come out of the case of Douglas versus Veterans Administration Federal Merit System, and they're designed to cover all of the facets of an incident that are relevant to whether or not an individual should be punished and to what degree. It's a very comprehensive list. They're weighted differently depending upon the facts and the individual. They have an individual who is a very competent, high-producing employee who has never had any discipline, does the same thing as an employee who has a long history of infractions. They're going to be treated differently for obvious reasons. But it's there to give substance to the consideration of, first, whether there should be punishment, and then the extent of the punishment, to be sure that it's appropriate based on the individual facts and the work history of the individual, and it's also progressive over the course of the department, so that people who are similarly situated are similarly disciplined, if that makes sense. And again, it's referred to as a matrix, and I've seen a number of permutations of what looks like federal sentencing guidelines, points here and points there. I don't think that discipline administratively lends itself to that sort of a mathematical formula. It has to be clearly based on the factors, and it has to be tailored both to the individual, and we have to be sure that it's progressive and consistent. That's not a mathematical formula. It depends upon the individual, depends upon the facts, and depends upon the nature of the organization and whether this is a common, minor, serious offense, and all of them are somewhat different. But there's a method to the madness.
Okay, question. Who has the responsibility of initially drafting these Douglas factors or addressing the Douglas factors, and then who has the responsibility of reviewing them after they've been addressed initially?
Generally speaking, it is the responsibility of the investigating officer who knows the case best, because they hands-on did it from start to finish, to address the Douglas factors, to address the disciplinary issues. We go back to human relations, obtain a copy of the person's disciplinary history so that we can see, is this a first offense, or is it the first kind of this offense? If the guy has, or woman has, a long history of offenses, it would be handled differently. We plug in the factors to the extent that they're relevant. Some are important, some are not so important, depending upon the case, and it depends upon the facts and the nature of the involvement, and that's what builds the judgment as to what needs to be done. It is the responsibility of the investigating officer to make recommendations, and as I think Resden has already said, that those recommendations are then reviewed through the command structure, so that everybody who has a dog in the race, so to speak, has had their say, and that the chief ultimately makes a decision of what the appropriate answer is. So I mean, it's my practice to make those recommendations, discuss the Douglas factors in detail, the disciplinary history in detail, and make recommendations as what's fair and appropriate and reasonable under the circumstances. That covers the Douglas factors and disciplinary methodology, unless you have other questions.
I have a question. There's been a lot of discussion about creating a national database on disciplinary actions on police departments. What's your feeling about that? I mean, do you have a sense of that?
I do have a feeling on that. I think it's a very good idea. It helps the ability to look back to what has occurred in the past, again, for similar officers who are similarly situated in similar offenses with similar backgrounds, helps the progressivity and the fairness factor so that we don't unfairly misjudge an offense and give a punishment that is too light or too severe in a situation where another person has been treated materially different. It's bad for morale. It's just not a good management practice. So the more we can document those things in the past and have that information at our fingertips, I think it's a good idea.
Any other comments or questions?
I'll turn it back over to Resident.
Okay.
As we reach the conclusion, post-discipline appeal rights, non-probationary employees have the right to appeal a suspension without pay, punitive transfer, demotion, reduction in pay or step, and termination. Probationary employees are at-will employees, and they may be disciplined and released from employment without having to follow the appeal rights process.
Resident, let me interrupt. POST, and for those of you that don't know, that's an acronym. It's Peace Officer Standards and Training Council, and they regulate police departments all over the state of Georgia. And so, are all IAs sent to POST, or what qualifies for a POST action in our world today? I served on POST council years ago, and I know we dealt with a lot of police officers that got in trouble. And what POST can do is it either put their certification on probation, pull their certification or whatever. So I'm not really sure what that process is anymore. Do y'all, does somebody have to complain to POST, or do y'all automatically send a serious violation to POST if it's an IE, or what's the process now?
So a termination has to be reported to POST, and then they'll investigate it from there. Resignation in lieu of termination, that's also reported to POST, and then they open up their own internal investigation to determine whether they're going to suspend their certification, put them on probation, or such as that. So yes, it is reported to POST.
I thought that was.
Go ahead.
I thought the process was the same. I wasn't sure how much it changed.
Colin can actually elaborate when he does his.
Yeah.
In addition to that, there's also a new category they created, which was resigned while under investigation. So that even goes a step further. Sometimes before they even get into the process, somebody will just resign. We report that. And then any discipline where there is a punishment of a suspension of more than 30 days is mandated to be reported to POST. So if it goes beyond that threshold of a 30-day or more suspension, we're mandated to report that to POST counsel. So.
Most criminal acts are reported to them also, right?
Yes, sir, because that's going to result in a termination, so that's automatically reported.
How long is the probationary period for a I'm assuming that just relates to newly hired officers?
Yeah, 1 year. That pretty much concludes going through the policy. Is there any additional questions? On the back of it, it includes our citizen complaint form, which they will fill out. Captain Smith kind of went over signing, giving a synopsis of the complaint, and that's what starts the whole process. It's logged in the book, it's issued a number, that way it can be tracked. Something I didn't mention is annually there is also an audit of the complaint log to verify that there is a disposition attached to each one, and the complainant knows what that disposition is. That way nothing falls through the cracks, and it's tracked. And that's one of the big things that IACP hit on is the ability to track these complaints, even if they're minor complaints.
One quick question
Yes, sir.
in reference to the appeals process.
Yes, sir.
The officer does have a right to appeal a disciplinary action, correct?
Yes, sir.
Even if it's considered a minor disciplinary action, and I say minor, less than 30 days or less than termination?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you go over briefly with that? And I know it's probably dealing with HR with the county as a whole, but can you, for the purpose of our citizens, go over what that process is?
Sure. So with a minor disciplinary action, if they do an appeal process, it goes through the chief. If it's a major disciplinary action, I think it's suspension over 2 weeks, that would go through the Glynn County HR. That'd go through Glynn County. That would fall under the personnel policy of Glynn County, and so it would go through HR. HR would handle the appeal process from there. Terminations, things such as that. So anything over 2 weeks is going to go through Glynn County HR, and minor will be handled by the chief of police.
What is a liberty interest hearing? What?
Can you let me know what page you're on?
That's under the probationary employees and other members. And it talks about, I never heard that term before. Page 13. It shall be before the police, chief of police, or authorized designee. I've never heard of that.
Essentially, it's what's called the Loudermill hearing. If Loudermill is the name of the Supreme Court case that established that there is a due process interest in one's employment when you're employed in a job like a police officer where you have full-time employment with expectations to continue minus discipline or misconduct. That Loudermill hearing, if serious discipline is contemplated, is held before the chief, and the individual has an opportunity to bring a personal representative to express to the chief all of the reasons that he or she thinks that either he should be acquitted or found not sustained in terms of wrongdoing, or if sustained judgment is the ultimate result, why the punishment should be
And that goes,
minor or less.
That goes for a probationary employee as well?
No, probationary employees are at will. It certainly can do it as a matter of courtesy, but it's not required by law. If the basis of the employment is you're on probation, you can be fired at will.
Okay, thank you. I just never heard of that term.
Yeah, it's called in the business, the art is the Loudermill hearing.
Any other questions from anyone about the internal affairs policy?
I have a question, and it's not directly related, and it might be a question for Officer Scoggins, but does Glynn County have a policy with regard to hiring officers formerly employed by other departments who have been subject to some form of discipline by that department? That may be really something that requires a long answer, and if it does, just give me the thumbshell.
Sure. Typically, as a rule of thumb, as Chairman Alexander said, the Georgia Post Council is the ruling authority for police officer certifications in the state of Georgia. So at a bare minimum, we require anyone who applies with our department who is already a certified officer, which means that they have completed a police academy at a minimum, that they are in good standing with Post, or they are allowed to be hired and to undergo training if they are on probation status with Post. Now, a probation status with Post could range from anything. In other words, if an incident was reported to post, they investigated it. Post counsel may believe that it does not rise to the level that their certification is suspended, but they may sanction them and give them a 2-year probation. In other words, if there's any sort of a step out of line, that their certification would be revoked, if you will. So we take those case by case. Now, we try to adhere to the very highest standards, and we want everyone to be in good standing. However, we do look at every applicant individually, and we have an interview hiring panel, and we always discuss those things. And prior to making any sort of a motion to hire anyone, the panel sits down with Chief Wiggins, and we go over it completely. I do a very thorough background investigation. If they've had any incidents at another agency, I request all the information. We go through the entire, whether it was an internal affairs investigation or a video or anything like that from any sort of a complaint. We do that very thoroughly. Now, again, we try to hold ourselves to the highest standards, but there are times that officers may have had a hiccup in the past, and they may have had a probation at some point, but we thoroughly vet them, and we make sure that we don't see any patterns of any type of behavior or anything. So that's sort of a short answer, if you will.
Yes, sir. You mentioned earlier that there's a new, I'm trying to find the right word for it.
Classification.
Classification, thank you. There's a new classification outlined to be resigned while under investigation. Mm-hmm. Does that alleviate, or does post remove someone's certification or put them on probation when they resign under investigation?
It generates a post investigation at that point, and they will do the same as they would if they were reflected as being terminated or resigned in lieu of investigation. Post would determine after their investigation if they were placed on probation or if their certification is revoked at that point.
So although the resignation went into effect, that investigation, at least from post perspective, continues.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, the reflection or classification of that is that they resign from their agency while under investigation. Now, some agencies, depending on the offense, if it's criminal or something, the agency may again continue that investigation. That's just a reflection as far as their employment, basically. So.
Yeah, basically what you're saying is pretty hard for, if somebody's done something wrong in the past, it's going to show up in your investigation, or show up through post, or show up somewhere in the hiring process, so you can vet whatever took place.
Yes, sir, absolutely. And even when we hire non-certified candidates, we have to, it's not just us hiring them, we have to go through a process to submit their information to the Georgia Post Council to get them pre-approved to go to the police academy. So, if they're already certified, Post Council has already, got an evaluation of their status. And even if they're non-certified, then we have to pre-submit them before we can even send them to the police academy. When I recruit from the police academy, they have already been post-approved to go to the academy. And I can tell you that the post academy is very thorough. I've seen a lot in the many backgrounds I've done. Even if you have excessive speeding tickets, a lot of times they will generate an investigation before you're ever post-approved to go to the academy, and they will make sure and take a look and go into that. So that is a rule of thumb, is what we go by as the Georgia Post Council.
Thank you.
I don't want you to think I'm not paying attention. I'm answering a news person's questions as he's texting me questions, and I'm trying to answer them as we go. I did want to say that this is part of a process that we have basically decided we needed to do to vet these policies. All policies are serious, but some of them are biggies, and people want to know. I think we need to start looking at use of force. I don't know, Steve, is that ready, or do you know?
The use of force policy is already in place.
Okay, so I would like, my preference would be at our next meeting was let's have a discussion on the use of force, vet it, and so we know, and we can let the citizens know what the requirements are with you guys with the use of force. Just one editorial comment from me is that, people don't really understand what goes on in a police world, and I think knowing these policies and being able to read these policies, we're not beating on IA today because there's a problem with IA. It's one of those things that the IACP recommended that we take a look at. You guys have done a good job putting a policy together. There are no perfect policies. They have to be changed from time to time and tweaked, and I understand that. But as we go through the certification process for you guys, this is one of those policies that you're going to have to show that you're abiding by this policy, either through reports or through investigations or whatever, when you put it in your manual. So when they come back and do the on-site for your certifications, you've got something showing that you're abiding by the policies. Am I correct? So it's not I don't want anyone to think it's an effort to beat you guys down, because that's certainly not the idea. The idea is to be transparent, to let everyone know what the process is, how you can file a complaint, what the results should be, and then we move forward. So I don't want anybody to take this as something negative. I think it's very positive, and I think that this is a process that we need to use so there is a good understanding of what y'all are trying to accomplish. Any other question? Mr. Walker, you or Mr. Hours have anything?
No, sir. No, sir.
All right, hearing none.
I don't have anything.
What's my agenda? Ricky, were you trying to say something?
He said he didn't have any questions.
Okay, good.
Before we move on, Mr. Chair, I'd just like to, if I can,
Sure.
before we move on to the next item, say thank you to the police staff for putting this policy together and making it available for our citizens. We said in our town hall meeting that we wanted the citizens of Glynn County to understand that it's all of our police departments, and it's important that they review the policies that you guys have done an outstanding job of putting together and making it available. The more knowledge that we have, the more information that we have, it makes things a lot better for everyone. So I encourage our citizens to go out onto the website and take a look at the policies that are already in place, and then be diligent about reviewing the ones that come online as we move forward. So thank you, gentlemen, for that.
I think it should be noted as well, Dominic's point, that these policies are based on national standards. Is that correct? I mean, so these are not policies that you have come up with in a vacuum. I mean, these have been reviewed and looked at from a national perspective, and what are best practices, and I think that needs to be stated as well. Thank you.
One point of clarification, are there any policies on the website right now?
No, sir, we haven't had an opportunity to do that. As soon as we possibly can, we'll get with IT and put it on our, I want to make sure we have the ability to do that. I certainly don't mind sharing them. Taking that information and moving it over to the webpage is above my knowledge. We're going to work with our IT and try to get them on as quick as we can.
Mr. Hours, is it be possible to kind of help that, facilitate that to happen from your end?
Yes, sir. I'll be glad to.
Okay, thank you.
I definitely think that's important for our citizens to have access to that in the easiest form possible.
Commissioner, we actually meet with IT, the director of IT, on Thursday, so that's something that we can bring up to her and get her department's assistance so we can get the move on that.
She's been out of the office, gentlemen, but I'll work with them as well tomorrow and see if we can get them on the website.
Okay, thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is, I guess, Officer Scoggins, you're at it again. Just the update on the hiring process and where we are and how we're moving.
Yes, sir. As I'd said before, a couple different times we've gone over the numbers. As of April the 1st, that's roughly when I came back into the division, we were sitting at 100 officers currently, as of April the 1st. We're slated to have 121 at that time. So that put us at 21 officers short. We then subsequently got awarded the Department of Justice COPS grant, which added 8 positions to our total number, which raised us to 129 officers. So at that point, we were 29 short total. We have since hired, processed, and have been sent to the road 6 officers that are currently in training, the field training program. That brings us up to, I apologize, we were 101, and with those 6, that brings us up to 107, okay? So that puts us at 16 short is where it put us total. Then, as of last week, September the 21st, I delivered 15 application HR packets down to Human Resources, and those were all vetted, done with background investigations, and they were passed off to Human Resources in order for Human Resources to make the final arrangements for the psych exam, the urinalysis, and the physical exam. We did have one officer in the last week who contacted us and decided to back out of his offer of employment. He had some family issues come up, and he's just, at this time, he just cannot move to this area. He previously worked for us, moved out of the area to pursue a business interest, and he just can't move back at this time. So that takes us from 15 to 14 that I delivered last week, technically. With that 14 added, that puts us at 121. If everyone who is remaining in that packet, in that stack that I delivered to Human Resources, that again would put us at 121 positions, and that would put us at 8 short, and that would essentially be the 8 COPS positions which we received. Coincidentally, we cannot fill the COPS positions until we are fully staffed, so that puts us right on track. Once those 14 are on board, we'll be at 121, and I can start filling those COPS grant positions.
Generally, what's your not your vetting process, I apologize. What's your onboarding process for HR? What's your time frame generally? I know everybody's different because different things have to be done, but just approximately.
Totally from our standpoint and HR, or just once I get it to HR?
The 14 that have gone to HR last week, so we're anticipating how long?
Typically, it can be anywhere from 2.5 to 3.5 weeks. And usually what happens is we utilize a psychiatrist office in Savannah, and they normally will work with us as far as scheduling goes, but as soon as HR gets those packets, they reach out to the candidates and they see when they're available, and then they turn around and reach out to the psychiatrist's office to get them an appointment. Again, sometimes based on work schedules, that can take a little bit, maybe a few days to a week to get them in. Now, as far as the urinalysis and the physical exam, there's no appointment required for that. They just pick up some paperwork from HR and they go to the local clinic and get that done. So those can normally be done pretty quick. Usually the only holdup is getting them into the psychiatrist's office in Savannah. Once those results are received back, most of these folks are already working a current job, so once that final offer of employment is made, they would like to, most of them, put in 2 weeks of notice, and we encourage that, obviously. So that's why it sometimes can range anywhere from 2.5 to 3.5 weeks. We have had some people that have asked to give 3 weeks of notice at their current job, and we're flexible. We like that they want to prepare their current employer for when they leave. But roughly 2.5 to 3.5 weeks.
Could I just add?
Go ahead.
Given if everything falls into place, what would be your projection in terms of reaching that 121 officers actually on the street? What would be what is your goal? What would your goal be?
Second week of October. Second week of October, I'm confident. I feel like if everything goes well, if there's no hiccups, that we could have them
out of the academy on the street.
Well, they're already done with, these are all certified candidates. So, and when I say the second week of October, I mean we could have them on board, hired with us. We have about a 2-week period where they spend time with us in admin, that we go over basic onboarding procedures. All of the policies that have been developed, they actually have to review all of those before they can go on the road. We do things like issue their equipment, qualify them at the range with their firearms, some things like that. So with the 2 weeks onboarding that we put them through, I would say the end of October. I believe they would all be transferred to the field training program in the patrol division. I'm confident of that. So in addition to that 121, I've got 10 additional applicants currently that have either turned in applications or that I'm actively recruiting. One of those has already done their interview, and then I've got 9 in the queue that, again, various stages, either they've submitted the application, I'm scheduling their interview, or I've at least touched base, reached out to them, and very positive response that they want to come to work for us. So if you added those 10 in, that would put us to a total of 131, which would again put us over, because Mr. Hours has authorized 4 overhires, because again, we're going to have some folks come and go. It's just natural. And so with those 4 overhires, technically we would be at 133 total. And with our numbers, we'd be at 131. I would only need to hire two more candidates at that point to get us to a point of being fully staffed with 4 overhires. And go ahead. I was going to say, I'm confident that'll happen before the end of the calendar year. I'm just, the way that we have so many people applying right now that are actually certified, and again, let me reiterate, these are certified candidates. We don't have to send them to the police academy. I've got a stack of 25, I believe, non-certified candidates that want to apply and work with us too. But when we have certified candidates, that reduces our costs greatly. It costs us about $18,325 to hire a non-certified person and send them to the academy. So for every certified officer we can hire, we save that money, and we don't have to outlay that money. So right now, we're processing the certified. So all of those would be certified coming in from the get-go.
Is that all the cost? 18,300 is all? Does that include?
That is salary, travel costs, meals and incidentals, lodging, required equipment for the academy. Yes, that's total, 18,325. But when you start thinking about sending 3, 4, 5 officers to the academy, then you easily accrue a pretty big total. So
That 134, that includes the 8 that come in on the COPS grant, or is that separate and apart from the 8 with the COPS grant?
yeah, 133 would be including the 8 COPS grants positions and the 4 overhires. Yep. Additionally, this month we are going up to Kennesaw, Georgia, which I know that everybody's, whoa, that's up around Atlanta. But I reached out and did a social media push through several different social media sites that focus on law enforcement in Georgia. Georgia Police Jobs is sponsoring a recruitment fair at the Governor's Gun Club up in Kennesaw, Georgia on October 23rd. So there are 4 of us going. Me as the recruiter. I have a rep from admin, a rep from patrol, and a rep from our investigations division. We're all going to travel up. We're going to present, our best impression to these folks that are there, and hopefully we'll garner some more qualified candidates. Now, again, I know that's up around Atlanta, but lately, given the circumstances of law enforcement and things going on, there are a lot of certified candidates that are looking to leave the Atlanta area. And in fact, out of that batch of 14, we've got, I believe, 4 that are from up around the Atlanta area that are just looking to move to a community where they know their community supports them, and we have that here in Glynn County. So that's a great recruiting tool that I've got, is that Glynn County supports our police department, and we've got support from our county leaders and from folks like you on the police advisory panel. But in addition to going up to that job fair, I already talked with the director of Georgia Police Jobs. We're going to coordinate trying to have a reciprocal event here in our community. We have so many great meeting venues here, whether it be, Jekyll Island or Glynn County facilities, whatever the case may be. I've already talked with him, and he's very open to the idea of basically hosting a job fair in another 2 to 3 months here in this area. So we think that could greatly benefit us with drawing some more folks in from this region. Again, if I could hire folks that are born and raised here, I absolutely would. I'm blessed to be born and raised here, but I can only hire whoever applies and whoever we can recruit. So if it's folks that are qualified from outside the area, we still make an effort to bring them in and let them still be a great part of our community and contribute. So,
do you offer any relocation packages?
We do not currently. Some other agencies in Georgia do. That's never been something that we've offered. A lot of agencies do offer a moving allotment, if you will. A lot of agencies right now, because times have become tough for some agencies to recruit, are offering signing bonuses even. Camden County actually currently offers a $7,000 signing bonus. But you have to remain with the agency for 5 years, and it's split up. But that's appealing to some folks. They want to sign on, but we've got a better benefits package overall than Camden County anyway. So we haven't had to even entertain that yet. We've got plenty of candidates applying and wanting to work here. So,
Colin, have you heard anything since, I think y'all implemented the take-home car policy last Friday? Have you got any positive feedback on that?
I have. I've got one officer that lives in an adjoining county that currently works for that agency, and he literally told me, this is the only thing that I've been waiting on. He said, I've just been waiting on Glynn County to let people take because he lives in the adjoining county but wants to work for us, and said, I was just waiting on this to happen, and I'm going to get my application done, and I want to come to work for you guys, and that's what did it, was being able to take the car home. So that's just one example. I've had numerous other our officers come to me and say, hey, so-and-so is going to call you. They live one county over, and this is what they've been waiting on. So
good. What about as we get closer to implementing the 10-hour policy? Has that been well received?
Been very well received. I know our officers in-house are just excited. They cannot wait. A lot of them are newer, and so they haven't worked it before, and they're looking to the ones that have been here longer that we have worked it, and we're able to tell them how much of a much better schedule it is. And then the built-in training is just going to be phenomenal. I mean, it's going to get them really where they need to be with the training. So, you know, we'll keep rocking and rolling.
Any other questions?
Now, Colin, also you've reached out to some historically black colleges.
Yes, we have. We have been actually specifically started an initiative to reach out to historically black colleges and universities. So we have been in contact with Savannah State University, which I actually attended Savannah State University. So it was kind of like, you know, kind of old home a little bit, talking about going back up there. And right now, though, they have put a hold. Savannah State has on in-person job fairs. They are doing some virtual ones coming up, and we are going to participate in those. Same with Albany State, and we've even gone as far as to look at Bethune-Cookman. And so we are anything in this region that we can specifically target some of those institutions. We're doing that as well, and that's something that I can say, you know, we honestly haven't put an emphasis on before, and I think it's something that we do. And in addition, I can give you the demographic breakdown of these folks that we have hired if you guys are interested in that and want that as well. Sure. Okay. Currently, out of the total numbers that I gave you, out of it, that includes the 10 apps that are pending, the demographic breakdown would be 11 white male candidates, 3 white female candidates, 7 black male candidates, 2 black female candidates, and 1 Hispanic male candidate. And I can tell you, in my experience of working here for 15 years, that's the most diverse that this department has been, at least in the 15 years that I've worked here. So I think we're making great strides in that area as well, and we're going to continue to reach out. You know, anybody that will host us and have us, especially as maybe COVID begins to lift some of the restrictions possibly, we'll be going in person, and if not until then, we'll participate virtually as much as we can.
And I'll volunteer, or at least ask to meet with you concerning your HBCU initiative. I am an HBCU grad,
okay,
and I know that there are a lot of organizations in this community right now that are planning various events specifically targeted toward HBCUs.
Great.
So I'd love the opportunity to talk to you
yes,
in
sir,
reference to that, and marry the police department up with those organizations
absolutely
that are doing that right now, so that we can broaden that that span.
Definitely, that would be a great idea. I'm looking forward to that. We talked about that with our Community First group that we met with, and that helps because that's one thing that they had asked, that we begin to make a few more local inroads in that area. So that'll be a perfect idea.
I'll give you a call sometime this week.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions of Officer Scoggin?
Okay.
Thank you very much. Good report. Well, I'm going to add one little editorial comment, and then we're coming up on our hour. But you know, we got in a real big hurry about tasers, body cameras, and in-car cameras, and we pushed and pushed and pushed for the police department to hurry up and get some numbers, hurry up and get some numbers, hurry up and get some numbers. Since that time, I mean, the number came in as a big number. I don't really want to discuss the number, but in talking with Chief Wiggins, I think what the plan will be is to go back, visit some other agencies that are using other equipment, just to be sure that what we're getting is the best bang for our buck. And if there is something better, we can take a little time. I've been assured that we will get the stuff sooner or later, but we want to be as frugal as the commission needs to be about spending, public money. So we're going to go back and take a look at it, and I don't want anybody to think that it's a failing effort, because it's certainly not. But some questions have been asked that we need to answer, and have the department answer, and so we're going to work just as hard as we can to accomplish that goal, and then give them our best information. We'll take it before a work session. We'll talk to the commissioners about it, explain, whatever the decision is with the police department, and then we'll move forward from there. But the tasers and the body cams and the in-car cams are not off the shelf. We just need to do a little more legwork.
Well, can I, specifically to that point, can the RMS is tied to the tasers and the body cams? Is that my understanding?
With the current contract that Axon is offering, they're actually including the RMS for no charge, no fee. The record system that Axon has developed is in its early stages, and so they are including that in the contract. If we never use it, if we never turn it on, then it still doesn't cost us anything additional. The contract itself addresses primarily the tasers, body cameras, in-car cameras, the full-blown evidence.com management platform, and then the new cameras for our interview rooms. Again, it's included whether we use it or not. If we did it a la carte, which we're working on those figures for Mr. Hours and the Board of Commissioners, if we do it a la carte, then they would assign a price to it if you wanted to buy it separately. But currently in this officer safety plan +7 that we're looking at, it would be included. So
you can't decouple the tasers and the body cams from the rest of the contract, is what you're saying?
You can buy them a la carte individually. They're just much more expensive because with the overall plan, Taser has built in a lot of incentives and a lot of rebates and things like that. So.
Yeah, the number I guess this goes under old business, but the numbers that we had discussed originally for the body cams and the tasers was a much different number than what we're seeing.
Right, and one thing previously, our number of officers has increased greatly from the initial time that we reached out to Axon. We got approved for the 8 additional officers under the COPS grant, and then we got approved for the 4 overhires. So that added, additional officers, and the contract is based on individual licenses per officer. You purchase the equipment, and the equipment is yours, and then you pay for the license yearly to access evidence.com and to access all of what they offer. And then also the number of vehicles was lower to begin with. Because there was some miscalculation on our part. It was just simply, we just had our number too low. We had left out our traffic division, and we just had forgotten to include them. And so if all positions were filled, it raised our number of in-car cameras that we would need to be purchasing, and those are based on a license as well. And so that's why there has been a jump in the overall quote. The numbers were just lower when we first started this process as opposed to what they are now.
I apologize, but could we see the numbers just for the tasers and the body cams?
Yes, sir. They are working on that for me, and I should have it in the next day or so. I got the updated quote today for the current numbers, the correct current numbers, and then they're also going to send me a quote for the a la carte purchase, if you will, of buying all of those things separately. So
that would be helpful.
Yes, sir.
Ricky, I see you've got your hand raised over there. You got a question?
Yeah. I just want to caution everyone that this is more of an issue of risk management than it is actual cost. So those two things have to go hand in hand. We can certainly continue to go down the road of piecemealing and, the officers that are having to do things manually now with little audit, trailing and who's touching what and what the workflow is and where this document is and the evidence is. And I thought that was the real reason for going a different route, not that the tasers didn't work or the body cameras didn't work. That's one thing. But if you're going to try to force again, these squares and circles, you got to understand the risk. If you're willing to take the risk of taking something that is a 70%, not an 80% solution, then let that be. I'm just putting it out there.
And as you mentioned, Chairman, I know there were several questions brought up by the commissioners that had questions about it. I've got all the answers already for those questions that I'll be relaying to Mr. Hours. In addition to that, I sent Mr. Hours the presentation that our sales rep went over with you guys, and if you guys would like it, or if he would like me to, I can individually email you guys. I can get the information and send that to you, so you could take your time to maybe go over that presentation again if you wanted to. But yeah, I've got all those answers. so far, at least the questions are answered. We've got them all answered, and we've got our justification for those. And we are reaching out to our Axon rep to go and visit some of those other agencies just to see what, what may be going on with different systems.
Yeah, I don't want anyone to think that we're trying to delay this project, because we're certainly not. But we need to look at other providers other than Axon to see if we're getting the bang for our buck. And if there's another application out there that does the same thing that costs less, then we owe it to the commission and the citizens of this community to be sure we've looked at those things and be able, and so Chief Wiggins and I had that conversation today, where some of you guys may need to go visit some agencies that are using other stuff. I mean,
Yes, sir.
that needs to happen pretty quickly.
Yes,
But
sir.
I know there are more than one provider for cameras and tasers and the in-car cameras, and just take a look and see what's the best bang, and then move forward from there. Now, we don't mean to delay this for months and months and months.
Sure.
We just need to do a little more legwork to be sure that we're getting the best possible product. And Ricky, your words are well taken and well said. And it is a liability issue, and it's time is of the essence.
Yes, sir.
Because it's only a matter of time before something's going to happen, and we're going to need that officer to have the equipment and the what he needs as far as to identify or to investigate whatever the incident happens to be. So
Yes, sir.
it's just, I don't want anyone to think it's a delay, but I said, Chief Wiggins and I did have that conversation today, and let's just take a look at some other folks so the commission can feel better, because that's a lot of money to spend. Y'all
Yes,
know
sir.
that.
Yes, sir.
And so we just don't need to, try to trap them or push them into a corner.
Right. Yes, sir. Understood.
Right, and the point I was attempting to make was, yeah, we can look at these, even Axon, even if you purchase Axon, no contract should be accepted, signed, agreed upon until a proof of concept is done, because that's what's going on with the current system. Is they say they're going to do something, and then they say something that's going to work a particular way, and then it doesn't. So if we can't have a company to come in and prove the concept and show the workflow through the officer out in the street in his car, sending information, going to 911 or emergency dispatch if it does that, or going through to the supervisors, and then the complaint, and then the forms and applications and evidence. It has to touch all of that, all the way to the officer's performance evaluation. So you can get rid of pen and paper, number one, but that proof of concept needs to be there. Everything has hiccup, nothing's going to work perfect. I get that. But I would not I don't advise accepting any type of contract or someone just saying, yes, we can do this and we offer this at a lower rate. Without proving, even Axon at the higher rate, without proving that these things work as advertised.
Yes, sir.
Well said. All right. In talking with a couple of the panel members, do y'all think that we can go back to a monthly meeting and still accomplish what we're trying to do, or do we need to stick with the 2 weeks?
I think we're moving forward, that where we can go back to a monthly and have any other meetings as necessary after that.
That's my thoughts as well.
We've got a consensus up here. Ricky, you okay with that?
Oh, yes, I definitely agree. And we can call a meeting like the co-chairman said. We can call a meeting in a hurry if we needed to and get everybody in there.
I think as long as we can keep our meetings to an hour and a half, we're not belaboring you guys, and we can still accomplish what our mission is. So let's, Dana, if you will, just set us up for our monthly meeting again in October, and so we'll move forward from there if that's okay.
October 28th look okay for the four of you here? October 28th, it's a Wednesday.
I would have to join virtually, but it works for me.
Okay. Is there any other questions, thoughts, ideas, comments that need to be brought before the panel tonight?
The only request that I have is that we push back the time. 5 o'clock is a difficult time.
How much you want? A half hour or an hour?
If we go back to 5:30,
5:30,
where we
okay.
originally started, it works better
Is
for me.
everybody okay with 5:30? All right, fine. Did somebody?
Good evening. I'm Justin Floyd. I'm an officer with the Glynn County Police Department. I've been with them for about 5.5 years, patrolled patrol division for the whole time. I've recently been added to a panel with different departments, officers from the different departments within the agency, to try and come up with ways in-house that we can boost morale and make things work more proficiently within the department. However, something keeps getting brought up throughout the thing, and it's not something that we can handle within the department. And that's our merit increases and our career track, our pay. We need that. The officers, all of us need that.
Those, what you're saying is what a lot of those ideas that we discussed when we met with the officers individually, and I think you were, I'm sorry, you were at one of those meetings. And that is one of our goals. We'll have to meet with the commissioners and Mr. Hours, or take Mr. Hours' lead to at least accomplish and try to get that back where it was. I understand that it's advertised that there is career track, and it's advertised that the merit increases and all that stuff that goes along with it. And so we will take a hard look at that, either as a committee and hopefully before the full panel, but we're going to have to take Mr. Hours' lead on that, since it does involve the accounting process with the county as well as the human resources.
Absolutely, and that's part of it. Is it's both about retention, keeping the officers, and also the hiring process, bringing them in. It's hard to pull them in and then say, well, we do have merit increases, but it's been suspended right now. It's difficult to do both of those things, but it's a two-part thing.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.
I promise you we will address it.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sir, I thank you for bringing this up. I just want to say that is a concern that has been expressed to us as we've met with the officers.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a matter of hiring and retention, but it's also an ongoing problem with morale, you know, and I met with some of the traffic officers today, and I told them, you know, they were so anxious to emphasize, you know, we're not doing this job for the money. We're doing this job because we're committed to it. We believe in the mission, and I have no doubt about that. But I love my job, but if I can't satisfy my loved ones and creditors, you know,
absolutely,
I can't keep it. And, you know, I think that it does, even the most dedicated officer over time, you know, can be worn down. And so I think I'm speaking for everybody here when I say we really do hear you, we take it seriously, and really hope to move on that.
Yes.
Thank you for working on it and talking to us about it.
No problem. Thank y'all.
And you can assure them that we will address it with the administrative staff, Mr. Howard and his staff, as well as the commission.
Appreciate it. Thank y'all.
Do you mind if I jump in for just a second?
Not a bit.
My own personal, and I'll jump in after Officer Floyd said this, and not as a representation for the department, but me personally. You know, I've been with the department for 12 years, and career track has been taken away before, merit increases have been taken away. And when the county makes these decisions, they make it as a whole for the whole county. So if they stop merit increases, it affects every department within the county. I personally feel that they need to start looking at it individually. The police department is probably some of the most trained, and you know, there's a lot of investment in the department. You need trained individuals. You need to keep them. I'm not saying we're more important than anybody else, but you know, it's the highest liability within the county. I think you need to focus on departments individually instead of making blanket decisions that affect the whole county. And I know sometimes that's hard to do, but I think that might help the issue. I know we've hit it really bad when it comes to turnover and things like that, and these are some of the things that these officers take into account when they decide to leave or they decide not to come here. And so I think, in my opinion, Glynn County needs to look at departments as a whole and make some decisions for that department versus a blanket overhaul for everyone. So just my opinion.
I certainly understand, Rez, and I fought that battle when I was actually a county employee. And it puts the commission in a tough situation in that they have to look at the county as a whole. They have to answer to their constituents, and they have to answer to the rest of the employees in the county. But I think they understand and they see where we are, and hopefully we can come up help them and work with them and come up with amenable solutions to these problems, at least to get y'all back to where you need to be going. Any other thing to be brought before the panel tonight? Hearing none, Dana, thank you for what you do. We certainly do appreciate it, you keeping us all straight and keeping us going to meetings when we need to be. And please feel free to holler at us if we miss something or we get a little crazy with you. But we certainly do appreciate you and Matthew. We appreciate your efforts in keeping us going here. And if you'll just send us a meeting request, if you don't mind, for our next meeting, and we can go from there. But we certainly do appreciate what you guys are doing.
It's been sent. You should all have it already. Excellent. Looks like the police have already gotten their notifications.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we adjourn.
I have a motion.
Second.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we're adjourned. Ricky, thank you and Alan for tuning in, and we'll hope to see y'all soon.
Thank you.